I think we have everyone here, or close to everyone here, so I think we might get started. My name is Matthew. I'm not your host, but I am your friendly neighborhood moderator today. What I'm going to do is very, very shortly, I'm going to ask our actual hosts. We have three hosts talking about different things. I'll ask them to introduce themselves. I won't do them justice, so I'll let them introduce themselves. So I'll just talk about a little bit of housekeeping first. I will ask you all, I let you know first, we are recording the session. If you don't want to be recorded, that's okay. You can still listen, just put your microphone on mute and turn your video off. In fact, I would ask everyone generally to please leave your microphone off most of the time, because, you know, most of us are at home, we have background noise, and that can all add up to quite a lot of sound on our end. That said, there will be opportunities to ask questions and to answer questions that are asked. What I would ask that you do, if someone is talking, introducing, talking about an Armagnac or gut health or cheese, if you've got a burning question, please drop it in the chat or hold off a little bit. We will have sessions where I'll invite questions, but if you can put it in the chat, it might be something we can answer quickly and simply and move on. But if not, we can raise it up to the host to answer. I think that's all. I think that's the important housekeeping stuff. So I think we can actually just jump in. I'm going to ask Morgane first to please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Morgane Foucault. I'm French. You will hear it from the little nice accent. I'm the owner of LPB Markets, which is a cheese shop in Serangoon Garden, close to Amokyo in the center of the island. And we've been operating for 7 years, importing and distributing cheeses in Singapore. But not only, we also have some groceries, we have some charcuterie, we have some champagne, some wine and spirits, of course, which we are going to taste also tonight. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here with you tonight and share a bit about what we do and how we do it. Quickly, we import between 70 and 90 different types of cheeses. So it's quite a nice selection of cheeses. Most of them are unpasteurized. So very good for our topic of the night also. And we have specials, of course, for all the special occasion of the year, Christmas, Easter, all the special products that we have. So if you want to see and visit us, we are in Serangoon Garden. We also sell online, and we have a second shop also in Robertson Quay.
I went in there for the first time a couple of weeks ago and have been in there multiple times since. For my wife and I, it's become one of our favorite little shops. We are spending far too much money on lovely French cheeses. It's fantastic.
Thank you for that.
Has anyone not received the pack, by the way? That's an important question I should have asked. The little box like that. I don't know if you can see me on screen, but you should have received that. If you haven't, well, maybe don't tell me, because there's nothing I can do about it now. Please pretend. Get some craft singles out of the fridge and just pretend you've got good cheese. Chris, may I invite you to say hello, please?
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. As Matt just said, I am Chris. I am representing Spun Spirits. I mean, we're quite well represented here. But yes, we have provided the Armaniac. And so Armaniac is one of the most underrated and less well-known spirits that's out there, which is quite strange because it's actually been around, I think since about the 1400s. So it was one of the first spirits that human beings drank for fun rather than purely medicinal uses. So just a bit about sort of Spun Spirits though. We started last year, officially started in November. So we are a company born out of the COVID times. So basically the company was started by, initially by Matt and myself. We both used to work representing Glenfiddich a few years ago in different markets. And then I moved to Singapore a couple of years ago. And then of course, COVID adjusted certain plans and we decided to set up a business distributing and consultancy and all sorts of other things related to fine spirits and later other alcohols. So we have, amongst other things, a wonderful range of Armaniacs, as we mentioned. And it is an absolutely fantastic spirit. Maybe not something that you've ever had matched with cheese before, but the whole idea was kind of partly sprung when we visited LPB Market in the first place. And so we thought all things French, French cheeses, French spirits as well, to be part of a theme. And also, if you haven't discovered Armagnac already, it is an absolutely incredible spirit, as we will learn over the course of the next hour or so. So looking forward to sharing this with everyone.
And Chris, as we have a minute, maybe for the people at home getting ready to enjoy some Armagnac, some recommendations on glassware that they should be using. What
Yes.
works best?
Very good point. So some of you who are more regular spirits tasting attendees might have a special spirits tasting glass. This is quite a classic Glencairn. If you don't have anything like this, any glass that you have that is a more kind of tapered aperture, tapered opening, just to concentrate those aromas a little bit is ideal. Failing that, just a decent wine glass will do the trick as well. Armaniac is made from grapes, like almost all of the wine that exists in the world, so please feel free to use that. But failing that, if you have none of those things, just any suitable glass, just please do not drink it straight out the sample bottle, because that's a bit vulgar. So just as I said, a more tapered glass will allow you to experience more of the flavors, more of the aromas, rather than just lose it to the atmosphere. So if you don't have anything like that, please go and grab them. I should add as well, for this tasting, we will be tasting all of the Armagnacs neat. If you do want to add water, ice, anything like that, that's entirely up to you. But because we've obviously got a lot to get through, we'll just be going through neat tasting just now. If you have any left over, feel free to drink it how you like afterwards.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. David, may I please invite you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm David. I'm a gastroenterologist by training. I used to hit the gastro unit at NUH, but then during the course of my work there, I discovered the gut microbiome. And it was in 2014 when I did the first fecal transplant. And since then, as you all know, there's been an explosion in the gut microbiome in terms of interest. And it's now linked to almost practically every organ system and every disease that you can think of. And because of that, I got together with two good friends, Dr. Jeremy Lim, as well as Dr. Chris Ting, who are all medical doctors by training. And we decided to start a company called AMILI, Asian Microbiome Library, and we deal with all things related to the gut microbiome. And I think it's really nice to see all of you here tonight. And I think all of you have some links to AMILI in some way or another. And I hope to sort of create awareness. Not that there isn't, but there's a lot of interest, but I hope to increase more interest and awareness in the gut microbiome in the next hour. And in the process, enjoy the cheeses and Armaniacs as well.
Great, thank you, David. I will say, throughout these various lockdowns and other restrictions, I've done a lot of Zoom tastings. I mean, I've hosted a bunch. I've hosted some with Chris. I've hosted some with other companies, by myself. I've also attended a lot run by other people. What they've all had is alcohol, and some of them have had food. I'll be quite honest with you, this is the first one I've done where we're actually talking about gut health as well.
Great. We have all three elements.
And of course, they are linked in ways that we're going to talk about. It's not just a random add-on. It's really, it's central to what we'll be talking about tonight, which I find fascinating. My wife will tell you that I've been talking about gut health issues since, well, for quite a few years now, when it was kind of a niche discussion point. You know, people were first starting to understand that gut health was an actual thing, but now it is becoming probably the next revolution in healthcare, I believe.
Yeah, it's gut microbiome is not something that I even learned in medical school. We were just told that if there are any bacteria in your gut, destroy it with antibiotics. We never knew about the good guys.
Yeah. Okay, well, that said, let's get into some tasty cheese and Armagnac, and then tidbits on gut health. Morgan, I'd like to invite you to take us through the first round.
Sure. So we're going to start with the mimolette. So which one is the mimolette? it will be the beautiful triangle shaped cheese and beautiful orangey color that you have on your left-hand side. Absolutely. So this is the extra old Mimolette. So Mimolette is a French cheese from the north of France, from Lille. So it's one of the further northern city in France. And Mimolette is actually that beautiful orangey color. It's given by a natural coloring that is called roku. So it's actually a plant that they are adding to give that taste. And Mimolette is actually a big ball, a big round cheese that looks a bit like Edam. Maybe you've heard about this one from Holland. So it's quite unique kind of shape. It's also called Vieux Lille or Boule de Lille, boule, which means really a round shape. And unlike the Dutch version, Mimolette has actually has a crust. So Edam has that that kind of wax around it, and Mimolette has a crust, and on it you have some microorganisms which are called mites, which are actually eating, in a sense, they are eating the cheese and aerating the crust and helping in the maturation of the cheese. In terms of taste, it's a very unique cheese. It has kind of nutty, salty, a bit of caramel, sweet taste at the same time. So quite nice. It can be even crumblier than the one that we have here. When it's aging even more, it's very difficult to cut it and very difficult to do a nice piece. So it usually falls apart, but that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. You just eat it like this. So I would recommend to put it in your mouth. Keep it, if the cheese is a little bit too cold, keep it a little bit more in your mouth to warm it up. If you haven't had a chance to take out your box of cheeses before maybe half an hour, keep it in your mouth and enjoy the flavor. Let it spread all around your taste buds. Enjoy.
Morgane, there is a question. Do we eat the crust on a cheese?
Good question. I would say all crusts are edible, except when it's made with wax. We have some Gouda, we have some cheeses like this. Obviously, you don't eat those, but all the crusts are edible. After, you have cheeses, if they are very old, like the Mimolette, for example, or Cantal, one of the cheeses that we're going to have tonight, or Comté. Those are very old cheeses. And I would say, personally, I wouldn't eat it because it doesn't bring anything extra to the taste. But if you have a young cheese or a young Tom or Brie, for example, I have some customer who ask me, oh, do I remove the rind? No, the rind is really part of the cheese. It really makes all the flavors and all that. And you can also do the both tasting, one with the rind, one without, and see the difference. And you will see that if you eat the rind of the cheese, you have a much more complex taste and much more enjoyable experience.
So we shouldn't just get a piece of brie, peel the top off, and just eat the contents with a teaspoon?
No, you should eat the whole chunk and just eat it like this.
That would still be nice, though.
Of course.
But of course, you do make the point, some cheese has wax on the outside, and that of course is not going to be a pleasant eating experience. If it's a waxy coating, you do need to peel that off. But if it looks like a bit of mold, if it looks a bit green and hard and stained and blotchy, that's absolutely fine to eat.
Exactly. And sometimes even if you have a cheese that has a little bit of mold, which can happen, it's our cheeses are raw milk, so they are still aging, they are still alive. And you can have some noble mold that could grow on them, and it doesn't mean that the whole piece needs to be thrown away. You can just either cut that part and eat the rest of the cheese, and you also have some cheeses that age like this. The maturation is definitely going to be a bit grayish, a bit bluish, like those beautiful goat cheese that we can have. When they are fresh, they've just been produced, they are all nice and white and beautiful. And when they age, they tend to shrink because they release all the water. And you have that little noble mold that appear on it that will give another flavor and really enrich the tasting.
So I absolutely adore cheese, and I also adore spirits and alcohol generally. I love the way they come together on the palate. So Chris, would you like to tell us a little bit about the first Armagnac?
Absolutely. So if you haven't poured it already, the first one, so in the order that you received them in the box is the order that we will be tasting them. In case it got jumbled up, then we're looking for the Domaine Bonnière SM5, and apologies to Morgan and any other francophones for my pronunciation. So yeah, if you've not poured this already, grab your glass and pour it all in there. If you're looking to really enjoy your Tuesday, feel free to hold some back if you want to recreate this with your friends later. So this particular one, it is the youngest of the Armaniacs that we have here. Again, just 5 years old, but you can see it's got a wonderful depth of flavor and then wonderful aroma. So let's give it a taste first, and the idea is that we taste it first, give it a nose, give it a sip, then have a bite of the cheese and then taste it like that. I'm sure we're all very thirsty, so let's do that first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the specific house. So as I said, give it a nice look, beautiful. We're drinking Armagnac. Don't want to spend too much time in it though. If you're giving it a nose, just want to tilt the glass, keep your lips slightly apart, just draw in the aroma. Try not to draw in too hard so you don't accidentally get Armagnac up your nose. And then you're just trying to think a little bit about the sensations. Again, we've got lots to talk about, so I'm not going too much into it. But for tasting notes, just if it's as simple as I like this or I don't like this, you're nosing it correctly. But have some other thoughts about other flavors that you might like it has a lovely richness to it, for example. Once we go forward, just give it a little sip. Again, please don't drain your glass. Again, if you want to get drunk, that's fantastic, but we are doing a tasting. It's classy. So a little sip, because you then also want to match it with the cheese and then kind of enjoy it before we move on to the next one. So just a little sip. I'm going to drink along with you because I genuinely enjoy Armaniac. As you would see, quite spicy, very, very interesting. Like I said, this is relatively youthful for an Armagnac. It's also a little bit stronger than most brandies you get. Most brandies that you get from anywhere will be at 40%. This is 48% alcohol. So again, those of you who find this a bit strong, if you do want to add a couple of drops of room temperature still water just to drop that down, then by all means go ahead and do it. Now we've had the first taste. If you've still got some cheese left, just give it a good nibble. Sorry, shouldn't talk with my mouth full, but we'll have to be rude for a second. Just enjoy that. Well, you still got the flavor of the cheese, then give it that sip with the Armagnac. And you should find the second sip quite different. So I find that the Armagnac, which was, it's got a bit of spice, but when you pair it with a mimolette, it just adds a lovely, like the creaminess really kind of works really nicely with the flavors. It really softens the impact of that first attack. Again, it is still a little bit on the spicy side, but I think that's more showcasing the interesting qualities that Armagnac has. Those of you who are more used to your more everyday cognacs, which are usually very, very easygoing and very soft, whereas Armagnac tends to be a bit more eccentric, a little bit more challenging in flavors. But as I said, fascinating spirit to get to know.
Chris, we do have a great question. Brandy, cognac, Armagnac, what are all these things? What are the differences?
Right, so we could probably spend several hours on just this topic alone, but to try and keep it simple. Brandy is essentially just any spirit that is distilled from fruit, as opposed to whiskey, which will be distilled from cereals, or rums, which will be distilled from sugarcane byproducts. So yeah, brandy typically is grapes. The earliest spirits that were distilled from grapes. So yeah, you take some grapes, distill it, you have a brandy. What makes cognac and Armagnac different, essentially, is that cognac and Armagnac are produced in specific regions of France. They have different soil types, they have a concentration of distilleries, There are some variances in exactly how they're distilled and produced. Again, this is a much bigger topic, but as I said, essentially Cognac and Armagnac are both brandies, but not all brandies are Cognacs or Armagnacs. Those are, again, brandies made in specific parts of France. If you want to get an idea of flavor, Armagnacs tend to be a little bit more spicy and unusual. Cognacs tend to be very super soft and very, very easy to knock back.
One more question for you before we move on from Jayla in the chat. How do you decide how to pair the Armagnacs and the cheeses? It's a bit more art than science.
You're trying the spirits with the cheeses. And again, when you say absolutely more art than science, it doesn't always work out. But if you've gone out into the world and you've tried a few things, and we're very lucky in Singapore to have so many different cuisines available to try in such a wide range of spirits, there's a little bit of trial and error. And then after some time, you kind of try to understand which flavors work together. You sample the cheese and the Armaniac, or if you don't have the option, just look at the tasting notes. And then you're looking for similarities in those that might work together, or you look for things at the opposite side of each other. So you're either looking for, I suppose apple and pears would go quite together, but chili and chocolate also go together as well. So yeah. We've mentioned these things and say, do I want something completely contrasting that's going to be really interesting, or do I want something that's going to be quite easy that they're going to get on with each other? No half measures, one or the other.
Well, what I find quite bizarre at the moment is that I'm indulging myself in fine French cuisine, food and drinks, and I'm really enjoying it. And I don't possibly understand how this could be good for my health. So I'm going to have to tap David on the shoulder to explain it to us just a little bit.
So yeah, that's a great question, because I think there's been a lot of interest in fermented foods recently. So I think we know that I guess one of the oldest fermented foods out there would be yogurt, and yogurt contains lots of bacteria and probiotics. And I think yogurt has been around for the last 3,000 years, and it's one of the earliest known sort of examples of like fermented foods. But of course, in our more sort of recent times, we've had stuff like kombucha and kefir. Those are very powerful probiotic foods as well. And something that's relevant for tonight, cheeses as well are actually known as containing probiotics, and especially those cheeses which have not been pasteurized. So the unpasteurized cheeses, they contain strains of bacteria as well, and as Morgan said, there are mold as well. And we know that in our gut, we used to think that whenever we identified a bacteria or virus, we had to get rid of it. But we now know that there are lots of good guys out there as well, and these good guys are in the form of like bacteria, viruses, and even funguses as well. And they actually sort of help to maintain a healthy ecosystem in our gut and make sure that everything functions in balance and in harmony. So the analogy that I would use here would be, in our gut, it's a bit like a tropical rainforest with lots of animals, insects, and plants, all in a sort of a nice ecosystem. But if you sort of burn down the forest and replace it with a one crop oil palm plantation, then you kind of lose that diversity, you lose all the interactions of all the various organisms there. And as a result, you lose out on gut health. So I think, for tonight, I think we should all be enjoying our cheeses, because cheeses are not just good for unpasteurized cheeses with probiotics, but cheeses are high in calcium, as well as vitamins and minerals as well. And the good fats as well. We know that some fats are actually like naturally occurring fats in cheeses are actually good for us as well. So maybe Bibi would like to comment, as she's a dietitian. So she could sort of tell us a bit about the benefits of cheeses.
Well, I in the past, as a dietitian, I would tell people don't eat too much cheese. You know, it's fattening, you know, it's high in sodium. It's going to increase your bad cholesterol. It's going to, you know, the salt in there is going to bring up your blood pressure. But only in recent studies, even up to 175 grams of cheese a day, and that is a lot of cheese. And it didn't seem to bring up people's cholesterols nor blood pressure. So there must be something, you know, interesting about cheese that we didn't know, but maybe it's related also to the gut microbiome. And I really do hope that people do enjoy more healthful cheeses, typically the aged cheeses. I'm not a professional. I did a quick radio show about, you know, how much cheese can somebody eat. According to American Heart Association, per serve of cheese is about 1.5 ounce, which is approximately about 45 grams, and no more than 3 serves a day. So it's actually quite a generous serve. I used to tell people don't eat more than 30 grams. I think LPB is going to fire me. But yeah, so thank God that more and more studies, more people, I guess, cheese lovers are, you know, want to find out more. And I think they are researchers as well. And so nowadays we know that cheese can be healthy and be part of a very healthy diet.
So BB, just to clarify, that's, you can have 45 grams 3 times a day, so 135 grams.
Yes, 1.5 ounce 3 times a day, and that is a recommended, you know, serve sizes by AHA.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are absolutely fine. You have approximately 90 grams of cheese in this box, so you can eat more than this amount of cheese every single day.
Yes, and I think maybe this is just from you know, interacting with patients. I noticed that if I allow them to eat a little bit of cheese, they will eat more vegetables, they'll eat more salad, and so I use cheese like a carrot at the end of the steak. You know, eat more cheese, eat more vegetables, I let you have more cheese.
At this point, I should also mention some benefits of alcohol as well. I mean, in the past, we used to think that alcohol is bad for you. So, but now we know that alcohol, with studies on the French population, we discovered the French paradox. We were wondering why the French drink more alcohol but had a lower rate of heart disease. So we know that alcohol contains lots of antioxidants and polyphenols, and these are actually fuel for the microbiome. And it actually improves gut health with its antioxidant properties. And as a result of improving gut health, you can actually improve health overall. But of course, again, just to reiterate what BB said, in moderation. I think you cannot exceed more than a glass a day, I'm told.
This is an area where I've done some research myself, and if you're looking for those polyphenols, which are obviously very important, you get those more in aged spirits. So not so much from your vodka and your gin, but you get them from whiskeys, Armagnacs, rums, drinks like that have aged in wood for a period of time.
So we're getting healthier as the evening wears on because we're moving from 5 years to 10 years to 30 years.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Well, before we have our 10-year-old Armagnac, we will need some cheese to go with it. So Morgane, do you have another cheese to introduce to us, please?
Absolutely. So we move to the Cantal. So Cantal is the cheese. It's not the blue cheese. So we only have 2 left now. Normally, you all finish your orange mimolette. So the Cantal is those one. So Cantal. Those are very, very small pieces. The wheel of Cantal is about 40 kilos. So it's about a big circle like this, quite high. And it's a cheese that is coming from Auvergne. Auvergne is in the center of France. If you have France here, you would have Paris over here. Here you have Lille, where the mimolette is coming from. And Auvergne will be the center part, where you have some old volcanoes, some good land of green grass where all the cows can wander around and create that beautiful milk. So you have a lot of cheeses that come from that region. And it's also a region where the saucissons are matured, you know, our cured saucisson, because the cave are quite nice. It's just perfect humidity and temperature to age those saucissons as well. So Cantal is, here we have a Cantal that is called Entre Deux, we have young Cantal, so jeune, and we have extra old. So the one that we are tasting now is in between, the one in between, which is entre deux, between two. And this cheese is matured for between 4 months and 8 months. So the maturation process is quite important. Briefly, how to make cheese. To make cheese, you need some good milk. So most of the time, of course, good milk is unpasteurized milk because you have all the benefits, all the good bacteria that are still inside. And you will add some rennet, which helps with the coagulation of the cheese. You heat up your milk, and then you will get like a curd kind of texture, which you strain. And then you have a curdy kind of cheese that you will put in a mold, in a big press to press it, to extract all the water. Then you get some Comté, for example, which is a very hard cheese. Or then you put it in a mold, in a square one, a round one. So that's how you make cheese. But the most important part after all this process is, of course, the maturation. It's like how you ripen the cheese, how you give the taste to the cheese, what you do with it. So whether you will wash it with some liquor, whether you will sprinkle it with some edible ashes to give some colors, some flavors. So there's all that process that is very important in the ripening of the cheese, and that is also important in Cantal. Cantal is made with a particular type of milk from a particular cow from Auvergne, and it's a very big, like I was mentioning, a very big wheel of Cantal. Usually when we import it, it's usually only a quarter, and the quarter is already like a big piece that will last us for almost a month. So you can imagine if you have a whole wheel. And the crust is very, very rustic. So usually you have about 1 centimeter of crust that you could eat again because it's edible, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's very aged, very crumbly. And the texture of the cheese has a kind of brittle, crumbly texture. It's also sometimes a bit milky. It can be a bit sharp as well. Sometimes you also say it tends to taste sometimes like a sharp cheddar, which is quite unique in flavor. And again, it pairs well with some of the fruits that we have here also. It gives a bit of compensation, a bit of sweetness, a bit of sharpness to the flavor of the cheese.
Fantastic. What causes that sharpness in a cheese? I mean, some cheeses have sharpness, others don't. What causes that? Do you know?
First, it's the type of milk also. Here for Cantal, it's very particular. It's Salers cows, so which is a very unique a cow, and also the cheese, as it's a natural product, it also tends to vary from season to season. Of course, the summer milk, where the cows are grazing on those beautiful lands with flowers, you have almost that, flavorful kind of milk and taste into the cheese. And when they produce the winter milk, it's hay, it's dry, it's a different kind of flavor. So you have that sharpness that arises first of the production, and then the maturation, the way it's matured, the way it's aired, the way it's turned, the humidity of the cave where they are stored. So it's really a beautiful and a very interesting process.
Well, you said it pairs very well with cheese. I think Chris might have some, the cheese pairs very well with fruits. I think Chris might have some recommendations on how we could maybe pair it with some grapes that have been pressed and fermented and distilled and aged.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is the Baron de Cognac, 10 years old. So again, please pour that if you haven't already. So I want to just go back a little bit. So this was, because of course you just got our sample bottles. This one, if you can see it, is the first one that we tried, the Man Bonnier, from over 200-year-old family. The Bonnier family established this. And it has sort of stayed in the family for generations, now run, Bonnier family married into the Lafitte family, and was around for a very long time. of the, I suppose, the current generation. Gentleman, you know, Mr. Bonnier was, I suppose, a war hero, but yes, as I said, developed over time. They have quite a small production, like 22 hectares, which sounds like a lot. It isn't really. They only do a handful of barrels per year. I think 1 year, you know, the average amount is maybe like 20 barrels in a year, quite tiny, when you consider that some whiskey distilleries will produce millions of liters every single year, working 24/7. So yeah, as I said, very, very small scale production. But as I said, they only want to release the stuff that is good, and Bonniers in general, they tend to keep the strength quite high as well. So yeah, definitely one that will appeal to your whiskey loving fans. But the Baron de Cognac that we have here, this one is, I suppose, a little bit more traditional. If you're thinking about sort of brandies in general, again, if you've had cognacs in the past before, a little bit lighter, more easy to drink. It's from one of the bigger houses, the Bordeneuve estate. So Baron de Cognac is kind of one of the brand names that they have. But again, the family that runs Bordeneuve, the Gouache family, are very, very experienced, very dedicated cognac producers. This one as well. So inside of Armagnac, which is the historical region of Gascony. I think it's not an official kind of demarcated region of France for administrative purposes, but sort of going back in the day. But inside Armagnac, there are 3 separate regions: Basse Armagnac, or Low Armagnac, Haute Armagnac, and Ténérez. Haute Armagnac being High Armagnac. This is a geographical thing. It's not saying Haute Armagnac is better than Low Armagnac. So the Domaine de Bonnier and the Baron de Cognac are both from Basse Armagnacs. If you've had any Armagnac before, it was probably from this region. It's the most well-known and the most well-represented region. So I'm sure a few of you have started sipping already. If you haven't, please do. If you have some of the Bonnier left over, please feel free to contrast that as well. Again, you should be able to smell that that is a little bit lighter, a little bit more winey in character. Now, if we give it a sip, to see that this tastes quite fresh. It's, again, lovely, approachable stuff. If you're blind tasting, because the houses have quite different styles, you might be forgiven for thinking maybe this is the younger one. But again, we picked these ones partly also to show off that diversity within Armagnac, within sort of different production styles. That there is quite a bit of variety that's in there if you kind of go past the surface. This is also lower in alcohol though as well, so there will also be a bit of a difference, about 40%. I always have to double check that. So hopefully you still have some of the Cantal left. If you ate it all already, I do not blame you. But yeah, please do give it a sip. Make sure to give your cheese, again, a little bit of a nibble. Again, apologies for rudeness, talking with my mouth open. My mother would be ashamed, but she's not on this chat, so I think I'll get away with it. And then give it a sip. Again, so just let it kind of wash over. Lovely. Brings out some of this for me. And again, when I'm giving you the tasting notes, this is my impression. You might differ. I find the cheese brings out quite an interesting new dimension for the Armagnac. I find like some more kind of salty, like kind of sea salt notes start to come out with it as well. So it's just adding this extra, drawing out this extra complexity that kind of isn't there in the base Armagnac. So it's one of the great funs of tasting when you discover these new flavors that you don't really expect. So yeah, find those hidden depths. So it's hard not to get lost and just sit and enjoy myself and ignore everyone and just drink my Armaniac. But,
still got a job to do, but you know.
yeah, that's good job though. I'm quite glad I have to do it. So yes, but as I said, Baron de Cognac, one of the more kind of well-represented ones, possibly one that you've kind of had around. Let's try to remember the story that because a lot of kind of brandies, especially cognacs and Armaniacs, take a long time to age. I think the story goes that the family many years ago replaced all of the clocks in the distillery. Instead of having a clock that would show the hours and the minutes like a conventional clock, it would show years and months. So yeah, you would have one hand to sort of show the passage of all of the years and the months to get it down to the exact month in which the Armagnac would be ready. Some Armagnacs you can age for many years. It's not unusual, it's not unheard of to see spirit that will be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes over a century before it hits the bottle as well. So quite remarkable stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to invite David to share a little bit more with us about gut health and cheese and Armagnac,
okay,
and
so
justify our decisions on eating it.
Yeah, so as you're enjoying your cheese and Armagnac, as it's traveling down your esophagus and your stomach, I think you'll be wondering, what does the microbiome do? I mean, there's all this hype about the microbiome. What does it actually do? Well, I think we now know that, the good guys are actually involved in many chemical reactions as they digest and break down your food. And they actually produce what we call metabolites and various compounds like essential amino acids, which then get absorbed into the body. So I think that for good gut health, the more diverse your gut microbiome is, the more healthy you would be in terms of all your organ systems. And the gut microbiome, also unknown to many people, is also involved in breaking down all the medications that we ingest as well. And of course, when there's an over proliferation of the bad guys, then drugs that we take like antibiotics, these tend to not just destroy the bad bacteria, but they destroy all our gut microbiome as well. As I mentioned earlier, when you start taking antibiotics and you start converting your tropical rainforest into an oil palm plantation, that's when problems start to occur. So I think as a result, we've begun to understand a lot more about what the gut microbiome is all about and what these good guys actually do. They interact to produce lots of chemicals that actually produce a healthy gut and a healthy body. And now we know that the gut microbiome is related to, there's the brain-gut axis. We used to talk about the brain-gut axis as to how the brain can affect the gut in the form of irritable bowel, which is very common, and things like mood disorders and depression. But now we know that the gut microbiome is probably the missing link. It's probably now more appropriately referred to as the gut microbiome brain axis. And as a result, there's been lots of trials going on looking at fecal transplantation, of which AMILI has a stool bank. Probably not a very good topic to talk about over wine and cheese, but yeah, a fecal transplant has been shown to be very effective in gut-brain disorders such as autism. The interesting thing about autism is that we have actually had an explosion of the incidence of autism, and we don't really know what to do with autism. There's no cure. But then about 4 years ago, a very intelligent scientist, clinician, decided to actually perform fecal transplant for kids with autism, and they found to their surprise that these kids actually had a 50% improvement in their behavioral symptoms. So this is really exciting because it shows that the gut microbiome is actually capable of controlling our other bodily functions, not just the gut, but the brain as well.
So how do we know that our gut is healthy or not?
Yeah, so one way that one could, I'm sure you're wondering what is residing in your gut. So at AMILI, we've actually rolled out a very interesting product called Bio&Me. And it's actually a product which allows you to actually sequence your microbiome. So all of us are very different in terms of our microbiome. We are about 99.5% 5% genetically similar, but in terms of the gut microbiome, depending on what you eat, where you live, what drugs you take, whether you were born as a cesarean section baby or a vaginally delivered baby, whether you were bottle fed, whether you were breastfed, all that determines your microbiome. So I think, I'm sure all of you are interested to know what's in your microbiome. And yeah, so we have a product called Bio and Me, which is available online. It's an at-home test. Just go online to Bio and Me, and you can order a kit and we'll send it to your home. Give us a scoop of your poop, and within 4 weeks, we'll tell you what lives in your gut. And not only that, we are able to actually replace what you are missing. So, I mean, all the probiotics that we take out there, they are what we call generic. You just buy it off the shelf, everyone takes the same. But there's not much there's not much basis to that, because you know, you have a different microbiome from me because I eat different food. You know, I was born by cesarean section, I was bottle fed, you know, I've got different diseases, I take different medicines. So at AMILI, we actually try to practice what we call precision medicine. So we try to replace what you are missing based on your microbiome sequencing. So that product is called Perform. So we have 5 different products, and we will actually recommend the product that is most appropriate to you. So yeah, give it a try.
Does anyone else have any questions for David on gut health before we move on to the next round? We've got a little bit of time.
Sorry, is my microphone on? Is cheese enough, or do I have to take probiotics?
Well, I think the thing about probiotic containing foods, it's not precise. We don't actually know what's inside. We don't actually know what's inside kombucha, because kombucha is usually made by home brewers. So when you actually take probiotics, it's probably a more scientific way of addressing what you are lacking in terms of microbiome in your gut, because we actually tell you what strains you need and in what amounts. And but you know, having said that, I think of course it's more enjoyable eating probiotic foods and drinks than eating probiotics. So I think in life, I think we have to balance it. Yeah. Probably we have to balance it with both taking healthy foods as well as ingesting supplements as well.
So David, I have a question. Things like Yakult, they advertise that they have the specialized Shirota strain that will survive through to your gut, but
yeah,
that is one strain. Is that going to make a difference? Is that going to be helpful?
So since I developed an interest in the microbiome, I've actually visited the Yakult factory in Japan. I was one of the guests, and I've gone to see their factory, and I've heard their genesis story. And basically what happened was that after the war, the First World War, Professor Shioda realized that there were lots of children dying from dysentery type illnesses. And this was despite giving antibiotics. So I think he was one of the first pioneers that realized that rather than just treat everything with antibiotics, why not go the other direction and look at probiotics? So he went into his lab in Kyoto and he tested different strains of bacteria, and basically he wanted to find out what strain of bacteria was able to make it past the stomach. Because as we know, the pH in the stomach is very low. And with the low pH, it practically kills everything. Only Helicobacter pylori survives in the stomach. So he found that this strain that he discovered was the only one that actually made it through the stomach and into the small bowel. But then as to whether this one particular strain had any beneficial effects, I think because Yakult became such a successful product globally, sometimes it's probably more beneficial to actually maintain the myth than to actually run a scientific study. Because if you ran a scientific study, whether it's a positive study or a negative study, you'll still have to report the results. So
Right.
I think that he's right. It's a strain that does make it past the stomach, but the function of this bacteria is a little bit of a mystery at this point.
Okay. With that, I mean, we definitely will have time for more questions at the end, but with that, I think we might move on to the final round, and one of my favorites, blue cheese. Morgane.
Yes, sure. So we stay in the same region in Auvergne with the Bleu d'Auvergne. So bleu is obviously blue. This cheese is made by two brothers in Auvergne, les frères Vergnol. And those two brothers, actually, they do a Fourme d'Ambert, which is another blue cheese. Maybe you've heard about Fourme d'Ambert, and Bleu d'Auvergne. So they do only two cheeses. And what they do Bleu d'Auvergne Fermier. So I'm just going to tell you briefly what is. Sometimes maybe you've heard about Fermier or Laitier. So the big difference is that a cheese that is Fermier, like a farmer's cheese, it's made on the farm with the milk that is produced on the farm, and that's it. So I would say that those cheeses are of better standards and of better quality control, because obviously there's not much of moving around of the milk. It doesn't go to a cooperative where they produce the cheese. And there's also a kind of standard. We know that it's always those 200 or 1,000 cows that are producing that cheese. So, and the farmers know what the cows are eating. So there's a good standard there. Not saying that laitier is not good. That's not what I'm saying. But it's there's a difference. Of course, the farmer that is making his own cheese is always prouder and pushing on that. So the Bleu d'Auvergne, the one that we have here. So you remember I've told you about the process. So you add your curd, and here when you do when the farmer is doing Bleu d'Auvergne, he's actually adding a little enzyme that is called Penicillium roquefortis. In this case, for this particular cheese, is that type of enzyme, and this enzyme will actually help in the process. So how does it work? So you mix it, you do your curd, you form your cheese, and after a few weeks, you have your cheese. And this particular cheese, after a few weeks, is completely white. So there's no blue veins, nothing that appears on it. And the important process in the blue cheeses is that after a few weeks, the cheese is actually pierced by like gigantic needles through and through the cheese. They really come and pierce it to have the air to penetrate inside the cheese. And with the enzyme, with the Penicillium roquefortis, you will have an oxidization that will create those beautiful blue veins inside the cheese. So that's really the beauty of nature and all the process of creating and preparing those cheeses that makes it that great. And on a more healthy note, but Dr. David will maybe talk a little bit more on that, of course, is the Penicillium roquefortis actually that you find also in Roquefort. Maybe you've heard about Roquefort, which is a sheep milk, very blue, like they call it the king of blues. It's quite good for your immune system. It stimulates your immune system. And babies, for example, very young babies, they like the taste of blue cheese or of Penicillium, because it reminds them the taste of the breast milk. It has a very acquired taste, and here the Bleu d'Auvergne that we have has that typical blue kind of flavor, but at the same time it's very creamy, quite rich. It really brings a buttery kind of mouth in your coating in your mouth, and those cheeses are really good to pair with well, obviously with the good liquors that we have tonight, with some sweeter wines as well, or it's really a unique taste. And I must say that sometimes my customers, they come and they say, okay, I want some cheese, but no blue. I hate blue. So it's a bit like I love it or I hate it. So it's a little bit my challenge to get them to taste some of them and to bring them to enjoy blue cheese, because there's a fantastic variety of blue cheese that you can go for. The very strong one, very runny, creamy, soft, smoother. There's a whole palette of blue cheeses that you can work around.
Fantastic. I'm allergic to penicillin, but I've had no issues with this cheese, with penicillium. Is it not the same thing?
It's different. Okay, I'm not an expert in terms of reaction, but I would say that the process makes it unharmful, I guess, because I've never had any reaction. One of my staff, she was also allergic to penicillium, and there was absolutely no reaction. It's really the enzyme, the alive enzyme that they add to the cheese.
Maybe that's something David could weigh in on.
Actually, I have no idea how to answer that question.
Okay, none of us know. We need someone who's both a medical expert and a cheese expert at the same time. Next time. All right. We'll move on to Chris with a very special treat for an Armagnac for us next.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it should be easy to guess if you're not sure which bottle is still remaining. It's the one you haven't opened yet. So that is the Chateau de Pellerot, 30 years old. We've had a big jump, 5, 10, and 30. So yep, that was the Baron de Cognac 10-year-old, but this one here, but I said the Pellerot is here. I'd just like to reassure you, I did not drink all of this evening. We used this bottle to send the samples out to all of you as well. There was a little bit left over for me. So Chateau de Pellerot, this is from the Ténérèse region. So it's less well known, but does produce generally some of the lighter styles in Armagnac. Again, very, very approachable. It's a smaller region in terms of the number of distilleries represented. So as I said, there's only so many that manage to make it outside of Armagnac. It's sometimes said that cognac they export in Armagnac is what stays in France. It's what everyone actually wants to drink. So that's also why there tend not to be very, very big names. I mean, with cognac, even if you don't really drink a lot of cognac, or you're not a big drinker, full stop, you know, if I say names like Rémy Martin, Martel, Courvoisier, you'll at least have seen those names. And even if it's just a billboard or on the side of a KTV, which I'm sure none of us have ever visited. But Armagnac names, you would really probably struggle unless you're, you know, a real spirits enthusiast to pick out some big names. But then, of course, that's part of the fun, which makes it quite enjoyable to discover. Chateau Pellerot, though, if I remember correctly, International Wine and Spirits Challenge, one of the big awarding bodies, named Pellerot their brandy producer of the year. And might not know that brandy, of course, is quite a wide category. It's not just made in France. You can make brandy anywhere. There's outside of France, there's some fantastic sort of fruit spirits in sort of Austria, Switzerland, Germany. South Africa has a particular type of brandy called Cape brandy as well. But as I said, Pellerot beat all of them out in last year, so we got a bit of a treat. Aged for 30 years in oak. You can see it's a much richer, dark color as well. On the nose, should feel that oak, just on the aroma. We should feel that's a bit more present, but it's not overpowering. It's not like it's just all oak attack. It's just when you compare it to the 10-year-old Cognac, you just should notice a bit more, there's more kind of woody flavors coming through. Now to give it a sip. And again, the oak for this quite beautifully balanced when you consider, again, 30 years. What were you all doing 30 years ago? Didn't imagine you'd be living through a pandemic, eating delicious cheese and drinking fantastic Armaniac at that point in time. It's one thing I love about aged spirits in general is when you count back the number of years and sort of think about what was going on in the world or even just what you were thinking at that point in time. 30 years ago, I was 7 years old, so I definitely wasn't thinking about drinking at that point, even though I'm from Scotland. We don't start as young. as you think. So of course, get your blue cheese as well. And I am going to be honest, I am one of these people that does struggle with blue cheese. And I'm kind of ashamed about that because my second ever job was working in an Italian deli. So we had access to a lot of really fantastic cheeses, including some blues, not just Italian cheeses, French ones and Scottish ones, English ones as well. And it's something that I really, really want to like, but maybe I'm still kind of waiting to kind of grow into it. But yeah, I'm going to, you know, get over myself and have a bite. Morgana's very angry at me, but I said I have taken a bite. And this might make me the convert, but let's match it with Armagnac. Yeah, it's interesting as well. It kind of lightens it up quite a bit. The blue cheese is definitely the stronger of the two flavors. That shouldn't really be too much of a surprise. Again, it's sort of quite bold. But as I said, we still have a nice kind of lovely kind of richness from the Armaniac as well. So, yeah, absolutely lovely stuff, and such kind of an easy sipper. And I almost wish we had more than 3 Armaniacs. Well, I do wish we had more than 3 Armaniacs to share with you as well, to show off more of that range and that diversity. But yeah, it's another sip as well. It's lovely, fresh, easygoing, delightful stuff. So do keep an eye out for these ones as well. Oh,
sorry, pairing wise, I love how that moves from the creaminess and intensity of the blue cheese through to the oakiness of this Armagnac, because with the 30 years, you get more of that oakiness coming through at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've been through the 3 Armagnacs, I am quite curious to know which one everyone preferred. Again, they are quite different, sort of between them, and not specifically the pairing, but just, you know, which of the 3 Armagnacs people enjoyed. I'd be very surprised if everyone says the same one. So
that's a great question. I think the easiest way to do that, we've had 3 Armagnacs. Please, everyone, drop a message in the chat. Just write 1, 2, or 3. If you remember the name, you can write the name, but easier just to write 1, 2, or 3, the first, second, or third Armagnac. Let's see what the favorite is. While you're doing that, I might hand over to David for some final tips and tricks on gut health.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, as we are sort of going through 5-year, 10-year, and 30-year-old Armaniacs, you must be wondering, how has our microbiome evolved over the years? So I think there's this very famous scientist called Martin Blaser. He's the director of the Human Microbiome Program. And he has an interesting theory that there's been an explosion of lots of different diseases, like autoimmune diseases, because of the use of overuse of antibiotics over the years. So I think he hypothesizes that actually the microbiome was a lot more diverse 100 years ago, before the advent of penicillin, which was mentioned by Morgan. And after penicillin came about, people started sort of using antibiotics for every single bacteria, fungus, virus that they could sort of identify. And as a result, I think he feels that the microbiome has been depleted in our bodies. And as a result, a lot of interactions that were useful were lost, and it's resulted in many inflammatory sort of mediated reactions in our gut, which has, as a result, caused an explosion of autoimmune diseases, obesity, which is linked to inflammation, and lots of other diseases as well. So I think another thing that I wanted to mention was, you know, apart from antibiotics, what sort of is bad for the microbiome? And what we know is that processed and ultra-processed foods are really bad for the microbiome. So, you know, the emulsifiers or the E numbers. So when my patients come into my clinic, whatever the disease they have, maybe it's an Asian setting, I'm not sure if you see this in the West, but one of the questions that my patients would ask me would be, after I've given them the diagnosis and the treatment, doctor, what can I eat? What can I not eat? What should I avoid? And so it's a very difficult question. And I think BB has been asked this question very often. And I often tell them, go for a clean diet. And what do I mean by that? So I tell them when you go to a supermarket, just shop on the peripheries of the supermarket, because that's where you find the fresh foods, the fresh vegetables, fresh meats, fish. Try to avoid going to the aisles as much as possible, because that's where you start bumping into the E numbers and the emulsifiers, all the horrible things that you find out of packets. So I think what we are actually enjoying tonight is probably what I would be advising my patients to enjoy as well. Cheese is very natural, very healthy, and wines contain lots of polyphenols and antioxidants, which actually help to not just improve gut health, but improve health overall in general.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our 3 rounds of cheese, Armagnac, and tips. But there is absolutely no need to rush off. I'm sure some of you still have some cheese left, some Armagnac left, and we've still got our 3 subject matter experts here. So please feel free to now unmute your microphone. You don't need to restrict yourself to the chat box now. Please unmute if you want and ask questions to whoever you think might be the most appropriate person to answer. I would just say if you're not looking at the chat, Jeremy Lim just dropped a link to a link about missing microbes, which I just had a quick look at and looks very, very interesting.
Maybe just to say that this was the book that David mentioned. David spoke about the missing microbes, and the author of this book was one of the early pioneers in putting forward the theory and wrote a best-selling book about it. And it's quite an easy read.
I have a question about the cheeses. It was such a beautiful selection. Thank you so much for putting it together. Like, absolutely delicious. Having not had the pleasure of visiting your shop, is it possible to actually get a selection where everything is just like kind of set up and you just take the whole thing home and put it in front of your guests and look way cooler than you actually are?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We do. Of course, we sell cheeses per piece. You buy whatever you want, but we also sell some platters that are like big platters. If you have like 6 to 10 people, that's coming soon. If you have 5 people at home, we do some platters where everything is pre-cut. You just put it on a table, open your bottle of champagne and enjoy. We do some smaller boxes also for 2-3 packs, which are also pretty cool for just a dinner or just a get together, a picnic. Those are really cool. We do mixed platters also. Those are usually popular, cold cut and cheese. Those are really cool. All those details are on our website. And I don't know if you remember, but in the email that was sent to you, to the invite, you have a $10 voucher to be used. So for your next purchase, you get a special discount.
Absolutely, amazing.
Yeah. Wonderful, Morgan. I think there is a $15 discount for
15,
every
yes,
100.
right.
Yes.
Absolutely. So please enjoy and check out our website. We have plenty of good selection, and yes, I must say that our platters and pop the box and all those products are our top sellers.
I was just thinking that sometimes, like at the end of the meal, I really like having a cheese platter rather than dessert. I really enjoy it. And what I really liked was, I think it's actually quite nice to have it at the end of the meal with the Armagnac, as opposed to going with the usual wines, because you might have kind of wined out during dinner. So it's a really, really lovely pairing. Like, I absolutely loved the last one. Like, they just went so beautifully together. So that 2 to 3 person selection, that's probably just going to be for me.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Absolutely lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
So I have a question. I'm going to ask each of the experts something similar. But Morgan, what's your favorite cheese? You don't have to pick one of the ones from tonight. It can be anything.
No, it's not. It's not one from tonight. I like the pungent, creamy ones. I like Langres, which is a cheese from Burgundy, from the Champagne area. It's orangey in color. It's very wrinkled. It's not particularly the one that you would say, "Ooh, sounds interesting," but it's more intriguing. But that kind of cheese, those are my type.
Right. On that topic, Chris, what's your favorite Armagnac of all time?
Favorite Armaniac of all time? That is a good question. So I mean, I'm still got so many Armaniacs I've yet to try. It's definitely a spirit on the whole compared to, say, whiskey. That's much more my background. But wonderful that these producers are. There's probably a particular one from another producer, Laber d'Olive. That's their 12-year-old Terrebouc. And that one is a little bit more smoky, a little bit more salty. If you blind tasted, you probably wouldn't think it's an Armagnac. You'd think it's a delicious kind of Campbellton whiskey, which again is a nice kind of hook for kind of getting into the category from more of a whiskey background. Again, that can be one of the interesting things as well, because of course some people approach from more of a brandy background or a wine background, so they'll tend to find some Armagnacs a bit more approachable. And then again, if you're coming from a whiskey background, especially if you like the more smoky, salty flavors, then you've got to kind of discover different ones. So yeah, as a whiskey fan, that particular Laber d'Olive was a great kind of entry point for me. One of the first Armagnacs I ever tried, actually.
Yeah. And David, complete the set. What is your favorite strain of gut bacteria?
Oh, lactobacillus, with no competition there.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I'd like to invite everyone to unravel the secrets of your gut by going to try Bio and Me, discover your microbiome, improve it with Perform, and then track it with Bio and Me again.
Look, we do have one question in the chat about process for Armagnac. Now that could be a very, very large, long answer. But Chris, what's the 1 minute answer on what the process for Armagnac is?
Okay, I will try my best. So all spirits are distilled, basically concentrated. You ferment something, like you ferment grapes, you get wine, you ferment grains, you get beer. But then instead of you distill it, you apply temperature to separate the majority of the alcohol from the water. Again, that's essentially distillation. So usually those are done in stills shaped a bit like a pot, or pot stills, invented in the 8th century. If you've had whiskey, especially Scottish whiskey, a lot of those are done in those pot stills. So Cognac uses these pot stills. With Armagnac, it's mostly what they call column stills, which kind of straight up and down, usually used for making very pure kind of industrial grade alcohol. But if you're very clever or you use a very modified version, it can actually produce a very, very rich type. So Armagnac uses mostly column stills, but I said they're a bit quite different to if you've seen like an industrial distillery. So Armagnac as well, most of them don't own their own distilleries. They actually have traveling stills that will go around the countryside, and everyone will have a big party while they distill their Armagnac, and just kind of eat and drink and make sure that the still doesn't go on fire. And then after that, it will usually, once you've distilled it, it'll get transferred to fresh oak casks for a few years to give it some flavor. And then it'll generally go into large casks for much longer periods, so it matures much more slowly than a lot of other aged spirits. Once it gets to about 60, 70 years old, it might go in glass containers and age in glass. So many things to touch on, and my brain already wants to go in sort of different tangents. But yeah. To go back, basically Armagnac, take your grapes, make some wine, and then distill it in very particular stills, a kind of a version of a column still, and then age it for most between maybe between 4 to 10 years, but you can keep going if you want. So yeah, I'm sure that's probably raised more questions than it's answered, but again, that would be an extra rest of the week probably to go through this.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, I'm going to put an end to the formal proceedings and end the recording. That doesn't mean I'm chasing everyone out, because we can all stay behind, chat, finish our Armagnac, finish our cheese, talk about gut health. What I do want to do before that is to thank everyone, particularly, well, two groups of people, our hosts, Morgan, Chris, and David. Thank you very, very much for your insight on your respective areas. Much appreciated. And thank you everyone else for joining us tonight. It's been fantastic to have you here. If you like the drinks, you can, the Armaniacs are available from Spun Spirits. We do have a website, spunspirits.com. We have a limited selection there, but if you're really into the Armaniacs, just drop us a message at drinks@spunspirits.com. Very, very simple. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very, very much. It's been a great pleasure. Really appreciate having you here.